I know people can read, I don't read slides, but there's 2 slides I will read, so I apologize up front. This is one of them. This is a cemetery. Lives are commemorated, deaths are recorded, families are...
This isn't moving.
Wow!
Read faster, Tom.
Family, I guess so. Families are reunited, memories are made tangible, love is undisguised. This is the cemetery. Communities accord respect, families bestow reverence, historians seek information, and our heritage is thereby enriched. Testimonies of devotion, pride, and remembrance are carved in stone to pay for tribute to loved ones. The cemetery is homeland for family memorials that are a sustaining source of comfort to the living. A cemetery is a history of people, a perpetual record of yesterday, a sanctuary of peace and quiet today. A cemetery exists because every life is worth loving and remembering. Always. Wow, you're quick on the button before. And VOCA is a nonprofit. Again, our goal is to work in abandoned and neglected cemeteries. Lately, we've been doing some in non-abandoned neglected cemetery, but our mission is to work in some of the 2,000 cemeteries in Vermont that have been abandoned. And our membership is open to everybody, and we hope everybody joins our organization. We're all volunteers, and nobody takes a salary or anything. Leon Dean was a University of Vermont professor. He started this and also the Folklore Society. Everybody's familiar with that group. And am I blocking anybody? If I am, let me know. And it was his mission to start this organization in 1958. But anyway, so Leon, whenever we do a presentation, I always bring his picture up because even though he was a professor at UVM, he had all kinds of health issues, but he put his life and blood into this in the Folklore Society. Now we are a unique group, graveyard aficionados. Our cemeteries in Vermont date back to the 1700s, and I never found any. I think the earliest one I ever found was 1703, 1704. But the stone that the monuments are made of are all depends where you live. Like you're in the Moulton Ave, Haven area, there would be slate. We're in the Marble Valley, the stones are marble. A lot, it depends on where you are. The unfortunate part is in Vermont, it's a tough environment for cemeteries. I mean, marble is tough. I mean, it goes away. Slate is hard, but it works well. And also, I mean, a lot of monuments we deal with, there was no base on them, so they tilt. And also, Vermonters love to put cemeteries on hills, as some of you will work with me as best. And gravity is not our friend. But there's no such thing as perpetual care anymore. People used to pay money. In fact, you can see it on the stones, perpetual care. What does that mean? I know what it used to mean, but in my experience, I have not found a cemetery, except for one very wealthy one down in the southern part of the state, which has millions of dollars in their coffers, that have perpetual care. Anybody can remember upon payment of dues? They're very modest, $20 per year, $80 for 5 years, and $300 for individual life memberships. We don't give life memberships to like Clarendon Town, for example, because I mean, I'm assuming Clarendon will be around for a few years. But again, our whole mission, all the money goes to giving out grants. We do take our dues seriously. So busy celebrating my 100th birthday, I forgot, sorry. We gave her a lifetime membership, by the way. We hold 2 meetings a year, the first Saturday of May and the last Saturday in September. There's been some controversy about the first Saturday of May, which is Green Up Day. But I made a mistake. I made a motion to try to have our meeting changed from that date, and I was told we were here first, they need to change Green Up Day's date. So I realized it was a lost cause. We offer grants to groups that need financial assistance in starting restoration projects. We give $750, and if we have extra money left over, which sometimes we do, we will increase that to help communities to do restoration. There is membership if you go to our website, there's the application, and we have a few rules that go along with it. But we have given out, I mean, 100,000 plus in grants over the years. It's been amazing how much we have given. Again, we're all nonprofit, all of us are volunteers. We have 2 burial grounds. We have 2 publications. The Burial Grounds of Vermont, we have it on, I have a book, you can look at it there. We have it on a flash drive if you're interested in purchasing one. And it's a great resource. I think Barry has one, don't you? Do you use it, do you?
Yeah.
So it's a fun, and we have it, it's right there. We also do Stones and Bones. It's a teacher's unit. We had a bunch of people came together. Howard Coffin was one of them. It's how to teach history and other things through cemeteries. I have some there for sale. I think it's like 15 or 20 bucks. It's not very much, but they've been very popular. And we will not be the book will not be republished, but and the Stones and Bones won't be either. But they're great. If you know anybody's a teacher, you're looking for a Christmas present, they're a lot of fun. And I've never every school in the Vermont has a copy of that, I believe now. Again, the purpose is to restore and preserve the neglected and abandoned cemeteries, and also to help other people realize how to clean them, how to take care of them, and how to maintain their cemeteries. Nothing makes me madder when I go and do a project, and 4 or 5 years later, I get a call from the same community because they have a whole bunch of new cemetery people that want to do another project, and I walk in and nobody's done anything since we did the work. And there's a couple of towns, not that far from here, that I've gone in 2 or 3 times in my lifetime, and what we hope to is, if we come in to do the work, the town and the community will maintain it. The history of the United States, the history of Vermont, and the people who made the history are buried in Vermont's old cemeteries. You can't talk about Robert Granger, Ethan Allen. You can't talk about, the Saratoga, anything, without mentioning people from Vermont. And the people who made that history are buried in Vermont cemetery. If that's not a good enough reason to preserve cemeteries, I don't know what there is. This is the only non-Vermont stone that I have, and I put this intentionally here. Men get all the credit, in history. I mean, it's always about the men. So at the Boston Tea Party, we talked about the people who dressed themselves up as Native Americans and dumped the $1 million worth of tea in the harbor. Well, this was a woman one of the women who did the painting of the faces and disguising of the Patriots. And this is her monument, and I put it in there intentionally because the women do not get the credit for what history our history. And this is what I think, if you can't talk about, use this monument as an example to talk to kids in schools or anybody regarding history. I think that says it all. Here's a woman who was present at the Boston Tea Party and painted the faces of the Patriots. Burials are very expensive, especially in Vermont. People went into debt. Sometimes they never recovered from it. Depending on how much money you had, I mean, there's all kinds of pomp and circumstance. If you're a poor farmer, you didn't do this. But if you were somebody who had a little affluence, I mean, you had the mourning gloves, you had, there was some feasting, there was mourning rings, there was the hair the deceased was made into decorations, which is kind of morbid. But it lasted. Again, the headstone, again, which was a big part of it, was put on the grave. It was important to Vermonters, especially if you had somebody that died in the Civil War or the Revolutionary War, the body never came back. It was important for the family that there was a monument placed in a cemetery. So a lot of times you'll see a memory of or whatever, but it was very important that a monument was placed there. And we talked about perpetual care a little bit. I always get a big chuckle. I was working in Virgins, and there's a very huge monument. Had a crane to lift it, had tipped over. I'm sure they paid outrageous amount of money to have that put there. And as we raised it out of the mud, there was a big sign of perpetual care. So unfortunately, cemeteries do not provide that. And with the number of people being cremated, like 90% or more, I mean, cemeteries do not have the income that they used to have. So perpetual care may hopefully just mean mowing. Now, we do some fun things. Now, I didn't believe this. This guy, where's the dowsing headquarters of Vermont? No. Danville, Vermont. World headquarters for dowsing. whoops, the Yahoo that we had, did you,
I didn't touch it.
oh, the next slide. This guy here is from Pennsylvania. He makes a living dowsing for graves. Now, I didn't believe it for a minute. I mean, whatever. But he had the dowsing rods. We had like 30 of us in the Williamstown Cemetery. And that's Charlie Marshall, one of our longtime members. And with the dowsing rods, if the body was in place, and I didn't believe it, but I did it. If the body was there, you walk, the rods would go like that. It was memory of, they didn't move. And everybody, the 30 of us who did it, everybody did it except for one guy, but he only had one arm, so we gave him a pass. We encourage press. Vermont liked a nice article way back in '98. I have a copy of the article there, the magazine. Not that good-looking guy, you know? This was recently on the, we did that with us?
Burlington.
Yeah, that was with Burlington. That was in South Burlington, Route 7, behind the Olive Garden. We got a lot of press. Cemetery was in horrible condition, probably the worst one we had this whole year. And that's a couple of our members who put it all back together again. That's just, I love that picture because this shows kind of an example of what I mean, how we do the restoration. This was a very anybody familiar with the Heartland Alder Cemetery saga? Basically what happened was a gentleman bought the property. There was a small cemetery on it. He wanted to move it. Next slide, we got involved, went to court. And because of that, we have laws in Vermont to stop McDonald's going into, Montpelier and 7-Elevens coming in. Well, at the time, there were no laws on the books to prevent somebody from moving a cemetery. Couldn't believe it. So we went to Woodstock, the probate court, and I think it was the biggest crowd of people they ever had in probate court in the history of Vermont to protest this particular heinous event from happening. Oops, I'm sorry, stay leave it there. But what happened was, the long story short, it went to the Supreme Court. I testified all the way up to that point, and the landowner who said he wanted to move the cemetery because he was afraid that people would come to the cemetery and murder him like the Xantoffs in New Hampshire, and he was going to build a house on there. So he did move it, and he never built a house, but the cemetery was moved, and it's very unfortunate. But because of that, we did go to the legislature, and we did get this law here. It is now, disinter and remains is a very long, drawn-out process. Communities have to agree with it. Historic Society's got to agree with it. Ironically, the Vermont Old Cemetery Association was not put on that because I think we were kind of local. But we have done the court. I have personally testified on all these. If you steal from a cemetery, somebody goes into one of your cemeteries and steals anything, like plastic flowers, it is a felony. And also, another thing we did 2 sessions ago, if you were a veteran and you passed away, nobody claimed your remains, you resided in the funeral home forever. So you cannot release the remains only to a family member. Now, with the law that we put forth, the extra 120 days, I believe, that you can release the remains to the Randolph Veteran Cemetery. They will inter it. So that's nice. And we've been working on a vandalism bill for a long time. And New York has an example of one. It's for every burial, there's they call it a death tax, and when we try to put it in there, I don't like it, but it'd be a fund that would be established. So if a community, like say somebody drove a car or somebody smashed your stones in the cemetery Clarendon, you could go into that fund to get the finances to help repair it. We do not. I will try again this year, but we'll see. This is an example of when we were at the Lakeview Cemetery. Curtis was a Civil War doctor, and that stone, I don't know how much it weighs, but it weighs a lot. It was sitting in the ground for, I don't know, as long as anybody can remember. So they called me on the phone what they're doing. I said, they're putting it up. I said, you're out of your mind. So you look. You're going to be funny. If you look right here, see the pin on, now the hole's right there. And I don't know if OSHA would go along with us or not, but we did put it back up, and that was one we did. This is another example, extreme example, but it was to have somebody come in and do that, I don't know what it would cost. But it was substantial. Nobody got hurt. I mean, they rolled that ball up on a couple of planks. I said, and the planks weren't that wide as you saw, and it's something somebody in this room would do.
By himself.
By himself, right? Yeah, have it roll on top of him. And ironically, while we were fixing that one, somebody called me. This was her great uncle's stone, or aunt's, I don't know her. And so she goes, "Can you fix it?" And we happen to have people there, so they had to go find the stone. So we went there. Again, this is another example of what we do. And that's how we put it all back together. I mean, and she was so excited, but it was kind of ironic. She called, and it was a work crew that was doing this job with a VOCA member, and it was and one of the guys that was on the work crew was a mason. So it worked out. It was kind of a perfect thing. It came out really nice. I gotta get that slide out of there. There's an example. Again, this is the West Street Cemetery. When I first took it over, I was a cemetery commissioner. I made a mistake of making a complaint to the mayor about the condition of the cemeteries, and my reward was they made me cemetery commissioner. Now, one thing you can do, and if the stone is no longer there, and if or so destroyed you can't read it, the federal government will replace the stones at no cost. And there's a form online. It's with the if you go to the Veterans Administration's website, there is a section. If it's something you're interested in, let me know, and I'll be happy to help you out. And there's a form to fill out, get this documentation, but they will replace the stones at no cost for the veteran. There was some controversy with the Revolutionary War soldiers because they were saying it had to be a relative. And I said, well, and I argued back. I said, well, there's no relatives; they're gone. And it's wrong. So we replace. I've got a lot of these, but I always put the replacement stone made out of granite and make it upright, with my belief that the granite will last a lot longer. These are the same stones. I mean, you have different types of stones you can order, but there's a veteran that you know of, if the stone is destroyed, if you can't read it, they will replace it at no cost.
Is that a nationwide thing?
Yes, absolutely. Now this one here I put out there, I mean, Brazilian Dewey, he's not buried here, he's buried in another state. He was a private in the Vermont regiment, but he was from the Rutland area. And he was present when Major Andre was hanged, and he was also there at Saratoga. He was basically all the major battles. And here's an example of why do you care about cemeteries? Here's a guy who was present at the birth of our nation and saw so much history, and he certainly deserves a stone. The least we can do. Lots of times I have trouble, like I said, this is the North Main Street Cemetery. Every stone that we see here was crooked or knocked down. So I said, next slide, what can I do to have help? So I called a friend of mine who was the coach for the defensive line for Castle University's football team. The Heights came down, and what a job they did. And they had more fun working in there, and we replaced every stone and fixed everything. It was wonderful. Here's a case. That guy on the left is a sheriff from Belfast, Maine. I got a call from him. There was a person going to assisted living, and they went into his house, and he also was a writer for Vermont Yankee magazine and an airline pilot, and he was a photographer. And they found that stone and another stone, and his house. And come to find out, he had stolen them from Vermont, and his reason for stealing them was he was afraid that somebody was going to steal the stones. So anyway, next slide. And I get this slow. So what happened was, he called me, and I found out which cemetery they came from. In fact, I even found the exact spot they came from in Northfield. And he delivered them to the Marble Valley Correctional Center where I was deployed. And Belfast is a haul from Maine, so I was going to meet him halfway, but he showed up, and it was around Christmas time. So I asked him, I said, well, thank you very much. And then it hit me. I said, wait a minute. So are you getting paid for doing this? He goes, oh yeah. He goes, yeah, I'm going to New Hampshire. He goes to shopping. So he did have a little other reason to do this. But the sad part was, while we're communicating how to get the stone back, he had him outside his office in Belfast, Maine. Somebody stole that stone. Again, so it went nationwide. I mean, so 2 or 3 weeks later, it ended up in the front steps of the Catholic Church, and he put it in his office. But the fun part, when we brought the stones back to where they belong in Northfield, the descendants of both the stones were present to accept the stones. It was quite a story. I had a lot of fun with it, and it was a nice piece of history. And the story's not over with yet. I got a call not that long ago. When they're cleaning up the garage, they found another stone. I said, "Oh God, this can't be happening." But that was one that had been removed from a Maine cemetery. So, but anyway. Again, Northfield, Vermont. We talk about. My son showed me this one originally. He was in Boise State, and this cemetery is right there on the grounds of Norwich University by their soccer field. I mean, it was horrible. They did. I mean, we can't repair things like this, and it's obviously near a area with deer hunting and maybe the target practice over the years with the cadets. I don't know. But so the town decided to take an interest in that cemetery. So this person, I believe all this was done at cost. So they did the person who was in charge of the project. I mean, had it drawn out, had it done. There's that good-looking guy there on the Historical Society looking at it, and that's what they did. They redid the whole. They put the stones back. People were talking about replacement stones. I don't know what it would cost for that, but it was very, very expensive. But the cemetery, what a difference! So now here's a case where the community cared about their history. And if you look at what it looked like before, with the bullet holes, look at it, and the original stones from the Historical Society, but look what they did. It's just an amazing, amazing thing that I'm very impressed with what they did. West Riz's Pleasant Street Cemetery in West Rutland. We repaired it, and then about 2 weeks later, vandals came in and destroyed everything we did. So we went back. I promised that we went back in the community, and we did a massive restoration effort of the cemetery. It looks very nice. Another thing, you always get children and students involved. This is the Delwood Cemetery, which is right next to Hildene. Everybody know Hildene? Ever heard of it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that big fancy cemetery next door. Well, what I've been doing, in fact, since COVID, we have not done it, so I don't know if it's going to continue. For 15 years, the students camp out at. And we all meet at that tree there, and the students have a unit. They've been studying about the Civil War and the soldiers from the Manchester area, and so I'll stop right there. So they all dress up. Half of them are Confederates, and half of them are Union soldiers. I think now I don't think they could be the Confederates anymore. Right? I don't think that's even whatever. But after what we do is we talk about the importance of cemeteries. When I come in and do my spiel, and the kids are thrilled. They camped out all night, so they're really, really interested in cemeteries. I get them up and moving around. And then we find every Civil War soldier from Manchester, and we clean their stones. We have been so successful that the kids are now, you can see their hats, and they made all this stuff. It's a great unit. We're now cleaning all the Revolutionary soldier stones. But the point was to get the kids involved, show how important they are. The kids had a ball. I did a presentation, and that's a Revolutionary War stone right there. I did a presentation at Castleton there a few years ago, and one of the kids there, so I'm really feeling old. She goes, "Oh, I remember you. We did that cemetery thing." They'll never forget it. It's one of those things they will never forget because it is so different. And this is Captain Dudley. That's the first stone we cleaned back now it's 18 years ago. And we couldn't read anything. All we did at the time, we didn't use any cleaner. We used brushes and water to clean that stone. But he was if you want to do some fun research, read about Captain Dudley in the Civil War. And right over the bank is the mausoleum, is a vault where they kept Robert Todd Lincoln's body there for a period of time. So they're trying to get money raised up to preserve that. Again, you gotta use what you have to do. As those of us who have been active in cemeteries, you use what you got. This is the House of Correction Cemetery on Pier Point Road, and everything had been sunk to the ground. Again, I needed help, and I reached out to the coach of the MSJ athletic group, and they sent a bunch of kids over to help. And it was great. I mean, but they are willing, if you ask, they will come. That's AJ Merrill, there he goes with it, but we did a lot of good work. And they also came another time, Rutland, this is a fun thing, Rutland got all these tons of daffodil bulbs. The whole thing was to have the city with daffodils, and so we planted them all on the fence, and we did a lot, and I don't think a single one came up in the city. But they don't plant them. Another example, I can't pick that up by myself, so I called MSJ, and they came with the kids. They were thrilled. Look at it. They put it back together for me. And they're all looking, as we were fixing the stone, kind of ne'er-do-well was walking through the cemetery, and they were making comments, "You better not touch anything in the cemetery." So they were looking at watching it. I also have been doing a project for 10, 12 years with the Rutland Middle School end of the year programs. Here's some examples. They come in, I had the history teacher, Ted Lindgren, who moved to Pennsylvania, and another teacher, and we've been doing this for a long time. The kids do everything. We repair the stones, we straighten them, and they do 2 days of labor for me in the cemetery. And I think they'd rather be with me in the cemetery than doing the last 2 days of school, I'm sure. Now, I get involved with some weird ones. Now, the Doty Cemetery in South Wallingford, if you know where the Grange Hall is in South Wallingford, you go down that road, park your car, and walk a half mile up in the woods. Well, this guy here, I got a call up to do this, and this gentleman was the bodyguard for Lafayette when he came over. And that's the story that was written on the stone, and it had fallen over. So I came with a crew from the Comcast crews. And they came with a bunch of men and their pickup trucks, their equipment, they hauled it all up. And we came through and did a massive restoration work of that beautiful cemetery. Look at it. It's absolutely gorgeous. They cut the brush, they mowed the lawn, they fixed, we straightened every stone, repaired everything. But in the case, it was a group of volunteers from Comcast that I asked if they would be helpful. And what a nice job they did. And I used them again for this project. This is Center Rutland, right, so their town hall. Like what? And that's Senator Collmore right there on the left, and these all. Saw that shirt, by the way. See, Kevin, that shirt. Okay. And it wasn't the worst cemetery we ever been into, but it still needed help. Now this is they gave me crap because they did a couple jobs with me, and I always came from work and I was wearing a tie. And so what they did was to get to me, so it's time to take our group picture, they all brought out ties. So they're all wearing a tie to get me. So yeah. Now one of the things that's been very helpful is a new product called D2. I use it all the time. It's kind of pricey. You can get it. I get mine at Granite, the place up in Barry. It's a very nice product. It cleans stones wonderful. So if you look at the cemetery next to the town hall in Clarendon, you can see what it does. I mean, I was there with Mr. Peck and Carla not too long ago. It's just amazing to read the stones. It's just a nice product. But that's something, you want to buy something that will help clean the stones, that's the product you want to get. And it's also used in Arlington National Cemetery. There's other products out there. We don't, the historical preservation people do not support anything other than D2. Soap and water work, or not soap, but water and a brush will work fine with a plastic brush also. But I use this in Carlisle, Massachusetts on stones from the early 1700s of slate. It's an amazing product. So if you have your own family stones or you want to work with a project, that's what I would suggest that you do. We do not get involved with Native American burials. It's too controversial to begin with. That's not what they would do. I do get calls regarding if you stick around and help out, but I have no intention of getting involved in that with our group. This was a case where I didn't realize it was a cemetery here. If you go up to the transfer station in Rutland, behind the scrap heap, there is a cemetery there. And my father discovered that when he was trying to drop off an air conditioner, I think. He said, put it behind the fence behind the cemetery. So he called me, and he said, well, I said, Dad, there's no cemetery there. Well, sure enough, I went down to the town hall, or city hall, and the old timers remembered it was the Poor Farm Cemetery. So you died at the Poor Farm, which was right by the high school, and you were buried at the dump. You know, and then they had the fence. It was old. You saw the shape of it. You could see this doesn't even do justice. I put that stone there, thinking that maybe it would call a lot of attention. It was donated by Mr. Sasinski. He donated that monument for us. That people would say, okay, well, we should do something, of course, and then it come to pass.
The house that was the Poor Farm is still there. It's a big house right near the road.
On the left there. Yeah. So he carved the stones as a memory of the Rutland's poor, interred here at the Poor Farm Cemetery. Rest in peace. Blessed are the poor in heart, they shall see God. Next slide. So I also got other people involved. So I got the Stafford Technical Center, and this was controversial too, because I had a list of people who were buried there. I think there's more than that. And so people were saying, well, should we put the names there? Was that embarrassing or whatever? And I stood up, and my contribution was, just because you're poor and you're buried at the Poor Farm does not mean you should not be remembered. So we put the Stafford technical students put that together, made it. It's a wonderful declaration of the people there, and it looks nice. And we have it all mowed, and it's been landscaped. The city forester is supposed to go up and put new trees up there. The ones that didn't take. But it was a wonderful operation, and it's all fenced in nicely. And we put, the sad part was, a week after we put the fence up on the side by the scrap pile, we put slats on the fence. A windstorm came through and blew the fence down. We had to now we have the fence, but we had to put up with reinforcement. But there's, again, a community effort. Poor Farm Cemetery, people have forgotten. If we had not got involved in it, then it would have been lost to history. It would have been part of the transfer station. How many of you are aware of this particular story? Next slide. This is the Stowe Cemetery. That's a stone from a Bunker Hill soldier who served and survived and came back to Vermont. I got a call by the Weybridge Select Board, and I went up there. I've never seen anything like this in my life. And I went down, and I could see looked over the bank, and there were remains over the bank. That's what's his name, Clark. Joshua Clark and his wife Stone there. And it's a road. It has nothing to do. Otter Creek's probably 200 feet that way. It has to do with the makeup of the soil, and all the cemetery was going over the bank. And I had no idea. I've dealt with a lot of issues, nothing like that. So you can see what's going on. And so we brainstormed several things. They wanted to move the cemetery back, and I said, well, why would we move it back? First of all, we have to get a whole bunch more of the Native American remains and other Native American issues around that. We'd have to wait out. And meanwhile, every time it rains more and more, the bank is eroding. There's a house about 150 yards that way. I'd be concerned if I had that house, because this is going on for over 100 plus, maybe 150 years. And I'm sure we lost some burials. We did find a headstone over the bank, but what we ended up doing was, you see how close Otter Creek is, but it's not the river that's causing it, it's the makeup of the soil. So per law, we had to do something. So we decided we're going to have an excavation, have to move the entire cemetery. And it took me a couple of years, and stop right there for a minute. And I did a request for a proposal, and I raised some money. I think around $10,000 plus we got some other money, and the town's on the hook for the rest. And we are moving the two patriots that are buried there. There's one also that's buried there that served under the command of the person who was there at Lexington and Concord. big piece of history. How many Bunker Hill soldiers do we have in Vermont? And it's wrong not to do something. And so we had so the state archaeologist came in, Jess Robinson, and we hired UVM archaeological department, and they came and the kids are doing all the work. Meanwhile, we had to find a place, because I was there, it was quite impressive what they did. They found other burials that we didn't know that were there. So then meanwhile, we had to find a place to move the cemetery to, and that became very controversial. There was one place that would do it, but it was like 100 yards outside the Weybridge boundaries, and they got all mad because, well, he's our soldier, he should be here. I said, well, you didn't care for the last 150 years, why do you care now? But anyway, this is the old Weybridge Cemetery, which is a few miles down the road, same era, but it was in rough shape, as you can see. We came in with a VOCA crew, and we came in and we restored the entire cemetery. It looks beautiful. We did have some problems. Some Vermonters like chainsaws, and so there were trees around the edge, like over here. And so while we were working there, also these trees were falling around us. People get a little concerned. I had to talk to them, say, guys, you need to either drop them the other way or stop. But we restored the entire cemetery. You can see how bad it was. There's a little girl there's a house down the way there, and they just bought the house. But it's a road next to their cemetery, next to their house where the cemetery is. The parents were really were interested in helping out. They came up and our crew brought cider and everything else, and the little girl had a little thing there to sell us donuts. So I said she had to come from now on. I said, wherever we go, she has to be there. She had a great time. So then we had last Memorial Day weekend, last May, we had a reinterment of the Bunker Hill soldier with all the military honors. And it was quite the event. Did anybody remember seeing this in the paper, news, or anything? It was quite and again, it was very moving. These were the stones you saw that were next to the bank, or right there, he and his wife. And we have, that's fine. That's the stone. The gentleman who made the coffin for the remains, I mean, he went overboard. We have a slide with a horse, or do we? But we came with a horse and wagon. And 250 people, and we marched up to the new cemetery. And we got to the cemetery, and the horse wouldn't go up the hill. So I looked around, and I found 4 or 5 of our VOCA people, a couple other people, if I could listen. So the gentleman who made the coffin, again, the remains I don't think weighed that much, but that coffin sure as heck did. That's all we could do. It took 5 or 6 of us to lift it up and next slide. Oops, I'm sorry. Well, the worst part is that we got all done with the ceremony, the flags, we had the military salute, we had the flag folding, really a wonderful ceremony. We had a proclamation from the governor. So I thought I was all done. I mean, I went from the beginning, I took care of the cemetery, I found the archaeologists, I did the RFP, I did all this stuff. I was sick of that drive back and forth to Weybridge, and we repaired the cemetery, VOCA came in, and then I was ready to go. And so the cemetery commissioner said, everybody was leaving, and it looked like a thunder shower was about to hit, and he goes, oh, Tom, you can't leave. I said, I'm done. What do you want? Oh, no, I had to bury it. So we had to lower the coffin into the ground. So I'm in a suit and tie. I took my jacket off, so we get a couple of the VOCA. We ended up burying the remains of the Bunker Hill soldier hopefully for the last time. I thought that was above and beyond at that point.
Don't they have a backhoe?
Yeah. The thing was, it was a pretty hot day, and I said if you saw me on TV at the time when we had a couple of press people there, and they came to me after I was shoveling, and I was kind of out of breath from shoveling, and I got a call. This also made national news. It's in East Pulteney. It's the oldest Jewish cemetery in Vermont, and there's a young fellow named Nathaniel. I can't think of his name, but nice. And he took this on as a project. He wanted to restore this cemetery. So I called him up when I heard about it, and we will come in and do it for nothing. And we went in there with a VOCA crew, and the only concerns I did have, we did have a rabbi on site.
His name is Metnell Chris.
Thank you. That nice fella. I just talked to him the other day, and he emailed me. and he did a heck of a job. I'm very, I should be proud of it. The cemetery needed a lot of work, and we went in there with a crew, and we did the restoration and saved them a lot of money. You can see how it looked. That's our crew here. And what he said, this is brand new. He had a blacksmith make that fence for him. Like most towns should have a nice fence in front of their cemeteries.
Oh, yeah, oh, nice.
We were talking about that today.
Oh, really? I mean, it does add a lot to it. It goes how nice the cemetery
Or not
looks.
have it. Or not have it.
I think that if you're proud of your history, you're proud of the cemetery.
Oh, yeah.
This was a fun, I put this slide in here because it's talking about community effort. This is the old Pollock Cemetery. As you come into Pollock, take a right, it's up on the hill, 1700s. What was fun about this was the eclectic group of people that wanted to work. We had a stockbroker we hired from New York City. We had a woman from Ireland. We had the local people. And we had people from all different walks of life, and we had a Bob. And we did a nice job. In fact, we were going to do some work. That's a young lady from Ireland. Well, we were going to do a project this year, but they had some issues, so we put them on for next year. But the community makes the difference. And this is a good example. Old stones were down. You see how we tried to operate that particular section of stones. And it was a lot of work. It was the hottest day of the year last year. It was miserable. It wasn't not a shade to be had, but they worked. And they provided us lunch, which was nice. I always would do, that's Turner, he was in legislature, it was Mr. Potter. Recognize him? Turner, Lieutenant Governor, ran for him. Anyway, he's the town manager for Milton.
Oh, yes.
And so my grandfather had a farm in Milton, and I made the mistake of saying I always will help Milton out, and so that we go up there every year. Now, CX reporters, again, when we do this work, if somebody shows up, they're going to have to work. But she gave, I was covering it, I said, well, here's your gloves, here's your D2, start scrubbing. And it was a good sport, she went there, she was scrubbing the stones. The other thing is, you use what you have. Again, the Moose Club in Rutland has adopted me. But they have to join, I think, now. But this is, again, the West Street Cemetery. It always needs a lot of help. And again, my budget is very limited. A lot of it's done just with volunteers. And they wanted to do this project. That's just they all showed up. It was right up from the post office. Again, any age, no matter what you can do, they can always do something they can do. This is Calvary Cemetery. I don't know if you saw that we just did a project there 2 weeks ago. I can't attack. Was it 2 weeks ago?
Calvary?
Yeah.
October 1st.
October 1st.
Tom, just,
What?
that's Diane Leary, that's the granddaughter of the founder.
Right. And she's the vice president, and that's Diane. I'm sure she'd love to know her pictures on this. Again, Calvary is a cemetery. No, it's needed help with the big monuments of TIP, and so we're doing a lot of work there. And every fact, it's becoming like this is a case where we work with abandoned and neglected cemeteries. This cemetery is neither abandoned nor neglected, but we're doing this as a community service for me, I think. Father John. Again, a great project. That's where we'll pinch that guy's fingers, right?
The last one, that's where you hit the...
Yeah. But again, it's a great project. In fact, I got one of the nicest compliments I ever got from a VOCA job. It was a restoration expert guy that stopped by there, and he saw what we had done, and he goes, "What an exceptional job!" He couldn't believe how much work we did. You know, it meant a lot to me. It was a hot day that day too. I remember correctly, raining.
You need to work in the fall.
Well, you only have so many days a year that you can work. Oh, look, Clarendon. Now, there's certain people here that I don't, Do you have life insurance on them, Carla? I mean, that's the Mar, that's the, no, that's the Marsh Cemetery.
That's the
Carla.
Marsh Cemetery.
That's Marsh, yeah, the Marsh.
Yeah, I did.
No, this is the,
Spafford.
Spafford. Again, needed a lot of work, with Kevin's insistence, we went up there and it looks nice. It looks very nice. I'm very, oh, there's Bob too, okay.
Yeah, he's generally bobbing around.
And if that, and that's,
Jeff and Lee.
yeah, that's in, where's that one? Somebody was asking, Kevin, talk about this one a little bit, since you're the one that you and Carla were the one that did it.
That's Haven Hill, which is the old Haven Hill Orchard up East Street, yeah. And John Romano, the gentleman on the right, had contacted us about the cemetery. He owns it, he lives in the White House down there. He owns the property, it's roughly 40 feet by 40 feet. His fifth generation, five greats grandmother is in there, and he had approached last year the town about doing some work, and we had said, or Bob had said, we'll take a look, and Bob contacted me, and winter came, and I had gotten a call from somebody to find a stone in that cemetery to take a picture, and at the time it was all overgrown, this early summer. And I was waiting around. In fact, the woman on the other side of the house came out and asked me what I was doing. I said, well, I was looking. I was out there walking around in shorts. And she goes, aren't you scared? Because ticks and stuff like that. But anyhow, I almost gave up when I found the stone. It was broken and it was down. So I got a picture of it. And then I contacted John. Said, John, I'd like to repair the cemetery. I'd like to get it back in shape. And we came down, we had a discussion, what he wanted it to look like. He wanted it to look like, really smooth, mow the lawn once every week or 2 weeks, or do you want to look like a unused but maintained cemetery? And of course, which was the cheapest way to go at it. So that's the route we took. He has people mowing his lawn, so he sent them down there, and they weed whacked it right down to the ground, took care of the brush.
There were probably a couple
Whoops, I thought I had another one. Never mind. I'm sorry.
pine trees.
I thought I had another one there.
Yeah, you can see all these little small pine trees. And Bob made a point of pulling those all up, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyhow, so I repaired, and I repaired 2 stones. And interesting story, Bob calls me, sends me an email, says, Kevin, there's supposed to be 6 manufactured stone, like cut stones. There's 38 burials there, but most of them are just field stones you can see just stacked on there. And they just sunk down the ground, but there's 6 they're cut. And Bob said, I only can find one, can only find one. I went, and he got up there, back up there looking for it, and finally we had all restored. Couldn't find it. And then remember like 2 days later, I had brought it home, and I had it on my table, I was repairing it, go back up and reset it, and I ended up, he's up there knocking himself out trying to find the darn thing.
Well, one thing Kevin said, is the cemetery does not, again, the cemetery is not on anybody's property. You're a lister, that you're not taxed on it, you can't build on it. So the cemetery either A, belongs to the descendants who are buried there, which somebody there was, or it belongs to the town or association. So you have a lot of people don't realize that they, like I heard, I was talking to somebody this evening, we were talking about a cemetery, and he gave it away. So I said, no, we don't give the cemetery away. It belongs to the descendant. Cemetery may be on your property, but if you look at the deed, when you buy the property, that section is deeded out. Because you can't pay taxes, you can't build on it. So there's a lot of laws on it, but people have a misnomer that because the cemetery is in their property boundaries, they have authority. They have no authority. None.
But if you want to go up there and take a look at it, there's a right of way from the road. You see the stone walls up on the hill. You see it's on old Orchard Road.
Orchard Place.
Yeah, Old Orchard Place. and you see the stone wall, and you see a break in the stone wall where people have driven through or walked through, and that's a right-of-way right down to the road, so you can park down the road, walk up there. And it really looks nice.
Yeah, and a perfect example, the other thing, right away, is every cemetery has to have a right of way. So I've gone to a few situations, almost at shotgun point, but rarely, but it has happened where people say, you can't cross my line. There's laws, you have a right to go into the cemetery.
I think that having the 32 out of 38 known burials there, or we don't know who people are, but you know there are these 38 burials there, and only 6 of them are cut stones, tells me that particular cemetery goes back to the very beginning of the community before you had anyone that was cutting stones.
Well, it comes down to money. I mean, a lot of times, I've been in many cemeteries with just a stone that has, well, even in the Marsh Cemetery, there was a block that somebody had carved by hand. If you didn't have the money, you didn't put the stone in. Stones are expensive.
It's interesting, that stone you see down at the very bottom, I put that back together. And all the small ones right behind it are all of the children, some of them dying in infancy. 2 years old, 4 years old. And then his grandmother's, well, I'm standing there with my back, but his grandmother's on the other side of me. That's basically the 6 stones. And then everything else is just field stone that was set on
Well,
there.
I've seen such, say, Ma on it, or a date, or nothing, so.
Well, look at Proctor. I mean, the cemeteries in Proctor wouldn't have any stones if the Proctor Marble Company hadn't issued a standard cut stone for the people that died while they were in their employ. And my great-grandfather is one of them.
Yep, it's a company store kind of thing with that whole cemetery. But again, there's one stone that, again, there's Kevin with equipment. OSHA has never been on our site.
Thank God.
Case in point right there.
Yeah.
And I will say, the work that Bob and Kevin and Carla and Jonathan have done has been exceptional. When Kevin asked me to help fix his great-grandparents' stone, I didn't know what I was getting myself into. But I do think it's important when you have a cemetery next to the town hall, it should look nice. I mean, that's your history. There's no reason not to have it look nice. And again, OSHA notwithstanding, I'm very happy and impressed with the work we did. And the gentleman with the excavator was wonderful.
And you had monuments that were knocked down for like 30 years.
Yeah, and it's like, it looks nice, and also they open spray that slide. That's your slide, Carla. Oh, yours, who took it?
I did.
Oh, you did, it's Kevin's slide. That's the,
Receiving vault.
I love the receiving vaults, they're fun to look at, that's kind of a neat picture, and that's a very interesting receiving vault you have on the flat cemetery. And I think a new door would be very nice.
Well, yeah, I thought about that too, but I gotta get that finished first.
Again, by law, if there's a fence, existing fence is supposed to be maintained by the town. And that's something that, you can debate what a fence is, but I would think having a cemetery of the age and historical nature next to the town hall, it would be nice to have call attention to it when people come to pay their taxes and say, well, here's our history, and have them walk into the cemetery.
That's
a Middlebury. We did that, I said, I put it there intentionally.
Yeah.
There's your level for the,
I know, I haven't seen that since October 1st.
I'll eat that.
There it is.
There it is.
Think positive. I had one.
Roll there. Again, if you go to West Rutland, they have a cemetery on the left. Now, there was a big thing about, they didn't know about where all the pine trees were, who was buried there. And there was some comments like they were like unbaptized children and everything else. I said, I don't believe that for a minute. But we went in there I went there to help the West Rutland Cemetery Historical Society do a good job. And we saw like they were mostly Irish, and there were some stones that were in Gaelic. It was kind of a fun project. But
This is one right on the main board?
yep, on the left. Yeah, you see those red pines that they planted. Now this is anybody see this recently on TV and paper? This was a house of destitute children. This was a Lakeview Cemetery in Burlington. I got a call. It was not the orphanage. It was basically a place that people would drop their kids off as during the Depression era, and there was 51 burials there, and they called, the Howard Center asked me if we would do a restoration job. It's kind of hard to say no when they say the house of destitute children, what are you going to say? It's very sad. We pulled every stone up. We came with a big crew. I think there was probably 35, 40 of us.
Where is that?
That's in the Lakeview Cemetery, right there in Burlington, as you go on the North Avenue. And again, here's a case. This is an active Victorian, beautiful garden cemetery. This is not what VOCA is supposed to be doing. But I couldn't say no. I asked the VOCA people if they want to do it. Everybody said absolutely. And that's how it looks today. All those stones, unfortunately, again, when you died at the house of their very young children, the stones were important, so whatever they had for a stone, they put in. You see some have been broken, some probably were different sizes. Kevin and Carla were there. It was a very nice, what a beautiful view of the lake too, by the way.
Yeah.
It was a nice effort by all of us, and so we, in fact, the Associated Press did a story on this, and if you're interested, you can just type in House of Destitute Children in Vermont, and you'll see all the stories on it. It was a nice project. It was probably one of the nicest one other than the Wadebridge that we did. And up from there, they have a whole field of indigent burials. So we had some time left, so we went up there and we went in to work on the indigent burial sites. Laurel Glen. That was a hot day. We're at the end of that. Now that was a fun job, except that several people got stung. One ended up in the hospital, but we won't talk about it. Other than that, it was fine. I put that slide in there because actually doing a cemetery project, a truckload, a sure pack. We used all of it, I think. Other much was left, but we used a lot of it. And again, if you haven't been to the mausoleum and to Cuttingsville on 103, that's where we were working. Very famous place. This guy here in West Haven, everybody know Chris Book? That's his great-great-grandfather. That's in Carver. That's over in the West Haven, down this back road for miles along the backwaters of Lake Champlain with rattlesnakes. And so we're walking up there. So we walked up there after the gentleman done all the work. I said, "You see any rattlesnakes? We're out of here." They only saw one when they were working. Yeah, this was this year. Look at the hat there, Ken.
Yeah, those two good-looking guys.
Two good-looking guys there. West Street Cemetery again, so it's going to be a long process in restoration there. We've been working every year. Shaftesbury. Again, this is a huge cemetery, Shaftesbury, right there on Route 7. Probably the most historic cemetery, I think, in Vermont. It has the Collins, the very famous carvers are in there. But again, you see what's happened. We had a good crew, but we need 40, 50 people at a time to come in and do the work. Middlebury Rotary, again, we use old crew. This is again, I'm doing a presentation for the Rutland Rotary next month. So I'm making sure I have a picture. That's the president of the Middlebury Rotary. To shame them, they're doing some work for me. I did straight in New York, but it was once part of Vermont, and we restored this whole cemetery with a big crew. They called me up, and it came out really nice. Now this guy here in Linden, Vermont, I have another picture over there. He believed religion was the cause of all the issues in the world. We had that epitaph carved into his stone. He carved it in really deep because he knew people would try to sand it off. They did try. But a very famous stone, and it's made sure he put his opinion on life on that stone. If you want to read it, I do have a copy of it on the table there. If you do not have rules in your cemeteries, this could happen to you. Okay. One of these days I'm going to be doing this presentation. The person who did that is going to be around. Again, no rules. Again, this is what can happen. You have no rules. And on the other side, it says, about women at 2 o'clock in the morning bit. The guy was still alive. I put that out there not for the laugh, obviously, But if you don't have rules, the cemetery would not carve this for them. But they have no rules, they have somebody else carve it, and it's not a little stone. So it's, again, a lot of people have, put on their monuments what they did. Where's that? Adventure of the Clothespin is what part of Vermont? Middlesex. That's his monument. Again, Hope Cemetery, that was one piece of granite they carved.
Wow.
Again, great story. I mean, cemeteries are full of stories. This is the Hope Cemetery. People die, the carvers came from Italy, they died of silicosis from inhaling the granite dust. And they often would carve their own monuments knowing that they were dying. So so he passed away, he carved his monument. They had the unveiling. And he was a very great carver. It looks just like him. The woman looks nothing like his wife. And the doctor who had the plot behind him was very upset because he said, I'm not going to be looking at her buttocks for all of eternity. They had to give him a new plot.
Hence the reason why the marble company made standard issue stones.
This guy died he was a car racer. He died in a car accident, not racing. But it's 2/3 the size of a real car. It had a contest to see if you could do it. Look underneath it, the muffler, everything's there. It's Hope Cemetery. Of course, then you had the fun one, Ash. Bent. Nicknames are always great. Little Fanny for all eternity. Oh, Little Fanny's here. Disco is really dead. Believe it or not, you can buy a lot online. So you don't want to have a physical lot. There are companies that you can put your money in, and they will have a visual cemetery for you, and you have a plot. Died not forwarding the text message. Owing more, gone away, owing more than he could pay. This is my favorite one. This spot's the sweetest I've seen in my life, for it raises my flowers and covers my wife. Here I lie, a sad pickle, killed by an icicle. Gotcha! I never felt more alive. The dead real estate market, new lots available. And this last one I'm going to read. Your tombstone stands among the rest, neglected and alone. The name and date have worn off this withered marble stone. It reaches out to all who care. It's now too late to mourn. You did not know that I exist. You died and I was born. Yet each of us are cells of you in flesh and bone and blood, and blood and bone. Our hearts contract, the beat of pulse entirely not our own. Your ancestor, the place you filled some 100 years ago, spreads out among the ones you left. Who would have loved you so? I wonder how you lived and loved. I wonder if you knew that someday I would find this place and come to visit you. And thank you for your attention.